That's what we want right here. So I wanted to try something a little different here on my channel. Do kind of like a story time kind of thing. Except these will all be true stories. Actual things that have actually happened to me. And because I have had a lot of really interesting things happen to me. I mean, like most of us. I mean, we all have, at least a handful of really interesting true stories to tell the public. And then plus me being a musician, I mean, I've been a musician for well over 15, 16 years now. And so I played with a lot of different bands, also different musicians. And so, I mean, I have a lot of interesting stories. I mean, I feel they're interesting, Some of them are funny, some of them are weird. So I wanted to do that. And, at the same time, I would also like to write down some of these stories and collect them into some kind of, I guess, like short story collection or like non-fiction short story collection of some kind. But, yeah, I don't know what it is. Like sometimes when I'm writing certain things, I lose interest. So I figured it'd be easier for me to just talk about them first, and then that way, I think it'll be a little easier for me to decide on which stories I want to include in some kind of collection. So, anyways, I thought I'd start with one that I guess I'm going to call it the unhappiest place on earth. And yes, it is in reference to Disneyland. Now, of course, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, in and around the Los Angeles area. But then, eventually, sometime when the riots happened, I don't know how many people are old enough to remember, there was a thing called the LA riots sometime in the early 90s. And after that, my parents got freaked out because where my dad was working at the time, the riots were happening really close to where he used to work. And so eventually, they decided to pack up and move. So we moved to Texas, El Paso, Texas. And again, this was back in the early 90s. And so pretty much been here ever since. Except that, I've lived in other cities too. But from time to time, like sometimes I do like to visit California, although, I mean, as little as possible. So anyways, last time I visited California, I want to say this was back in 2012. I would say like mid 2012. I do remember it was around the same time that the movie American Reunion was out in theaters. American Reunion, of course, one of those American Pie movies. And so, yeah, I believe it was like 2012 during the spring. And so I went with my mom and some cousins of mine. We decided to take a trip to Disneyland and other areas, other parts in California. But, and so before that, the last time I had been there was like when I was 12 years old. So yeah, I figured I was way overdue to go and visit. And pretty much the first day, like we went to they have that California Adventure thing, which is technically like a separate theme park. To me, it just reminded me of like Disneyland's version of some kind of state fair or carnival thing. And so, I mean, yeah, it was okay. We walked a lot and went home. I want to say it was that day. Yeah, well, anyways, like that day, that same night, we tried to catch a shuttle back to our hotel we were staying at. And I guess in the parking lot area of Disneyland, and they have these like shuttles there that you have to wait in line. But I remember when we were there, I didn't see any kind of designated signs. Like there was no signs posted that read, something like, okay, if you're staying at this hotel, wait in this line for this shuttle. There was no sign, absolutely no sign that had anything like that. I mean, nothing at all. And even if there were, I mean, I would say they must have been like very, very small or very worn out, or I don't know if, they were still in the process of posting these signs. But I remember there was nothing there. And not only that, the area, this like whole shuttle waiting area, it was really dark, and it was already the evening. There were some streetlights, but the only streetlights that were on were like at least 2 or 3 blocks away, and so there was very little light in this area. And so I was with my mom, and then some of my cousins, and then also my niece and nephew. And we were all tired, we were exhausted, and, we didn't want to do anything. And then, but at the same time, we were confused as to which line to stand in. And I don't remember exactly how this happened, but at some point, I guess my mom pushed past a couple of people. And, I mean, it's... Because, like I said, we were all tired, and my mom especially. In fact, she had just recovered from some kind of foot surgery that she had, like 2-3 months prior to that. And I mean, of course, which I was already surprised that she decided to go on that trip, anyways. But I guess she really wanted to. And so, yeah, my mom was especially tired. I say. No doubt she was more tired than the rest of us. And so, she kind of like pushed past these people. And then I guess this one guy thought that he assumed that she was trying to cut in front of him in the line that he was waiting in. And he got all pissed off. And I could tell that he was really tired also. And, of course, I had never seen this guy before. None of us had seen this guy before, but he got so pissed off, and he like literally shouted at my mom, and he said, "Lady, you can't cut in front of me. What the hell do you think you're doing?" And something along those lines. And my mom just ignored him, and she kept moving past him, and he still shouted at her because he still was under the assumption that she was trying to cut in line or something. And, but yeah, so I mean, he kept shouting at her, and then eventually I started walking past him because I was trying to see where my mom was going, and I passed by him. And at this point, yeah, I guess it's fair to say I did kind of feel like punching this guy. Even though I was tired, I felt really tired, and, but I felt like, I could already see in my mind that me punching that guy wouldn't have solved anything. Granted, maybe in the moment it would have made me feel a little better, or, but I mean, I've never been the type of person to condone violence, especially when it can be avoided. You know, that's how I've always felt. So, and, you know, in a split second, it's kind of like I went from wanting to punch him and then reminded myself that, no, it's just going to make things worse. You know, just don't do anything. So I was able to, you know, bite my tongue and move past this guy. But he was still kind of shouting, you know, the same similar stuff, you know, about you can't cut in front of us, blah, blah, blah. And so then I stopped. I turned around, and again, I still came really close to punching him. But once again, I reminded myself, no, don't do anything. It's not going to help anything. So instead, I just remember holding up my hand and wanting to flip him off, but instead I flashed him the peace sign. Most people are familiar with the peace sign. You know, you just hold up 2 fingers. So that's what I did. And I think in some way I was also a little bit surprised that I held up the peace sign, because I was kind of like intending to flip him off. But I was surprised that I actually didn't, and I was actually able to avoid that. You know, like I said, avoid making things worse. I held up the peace sign. And when I did that, I think even this guy was surprised too, because I think even he was expecting me to flip him off. Which in that situation, I think it was fair to assume that one of us was going to expect that one of us would flip. One of us would flip each other off, or we would flip each other off at some point. So yeah, then the next thing I knew, after I held up the peace sign, I said something along the lines of, I said like, hey man, we're not cutting in line. We just decided that we're just going to go walk back to our hotel instead of waiting here. And then he just didn't say anything, and I said, that's it, and you know what? Peace and love to you, man. Have a good night. And I turned around, started walking away. But then I guess because this guy was still pissed off, he responded to me with like, oh, whatever, go smoke your bong, hippie. But at that point, I was still walking. I was still far enough away from him, that I really didn't feel like turning back. So I just kept on walking. And then me and my mom and my niece and nephew and cousins, we walked back to our hotel, which definitely sucked because our hotel ended up being we thought it was no more than a couple blocks away, but in reality it was I want to say 2 miles away or something like that. So, but yeah, eventually we made it back to our hotel, and we were extremely tired, and we passed out as soon as we were able to go to bed and all that. And but yeah, it's whenever I think back on it, for the longest time too, even the next day and a couple weeks after that, a couple months after that, in fact, I guess it's always been one of those things that has happened to me that I felt like that I was surprised. Not only was I surprised that I was able to exercise control, but then I don't know. I mean, I guess because still when I go over it in my head, it definitely could have been much worse. Definitely could have been one of those things where things got out of hand. Because I've seen things like that happen in the news. They end up being headlines in the news, and you hear about people arguing over really stupid stuff, hurting each other, even killing each other over really stupid things. And I guess for me, that could have been that moment for me, but I am grateful that it wasn't. And I mean, granted, I'm not saying that, by me telling this story, I'm not saying that it's the fault of Disneyland. However, I am saying that back then at that point, they should have had some kind of signs that clearly marked, which shuttle, was going to which hotel. But they didn't have that. And even though, later on I learned that these shuttles were, technically not part of Disneyland, they were all from third-party companies. But still, if that's the case, then those third-party companies should be responsible for providing those signs that tell people, hey, if you're staying at this hotel, stand in line for this shuttle. This shuttle is going to take you to this particular hotel. But no, they didn't have that. They didn't freaking have that. For whatever reason, I mean, I don't know, they wanted to save money, or, they're just, nobody at any of those companies had the foresight to think of that. But then it seems like one of those things that they would have the foresight to at least think about for a little bit or something. I mean, come on, it's so yeah, and then that guy that I flashed the peace sign to, and actually when he told me when he said the thing about go smoke your bong, hippie, I found it more hilarious really than anything else, because the guy, he was around the same age as me, and that's something that normally you'd expect someone from an older generation to say to a younger generation, right? I mean, I think so. So yeah, I mean, that's the story that's what I wanted to talk about. And then, of course, I mean, the next day we went to the actual Disneyland theme park, and that was all right. That was pretty cool. But by that point, I was already so tired of walking. I really just didn't want to do anything. And and then after that, the next day, we took my little cousins and niece and nephew to Legoland. Legoland is way overpriced, in my opinion. Yeah, they got some cool stuff there, but it's all for kids, and none of the rides are for adults, and it's so yeah, that's my story for true story. So thanks for listening. If you listen all the way through, if you listen to this entire thing, thanks. Hope I didn't bore anybody too much. So yeah, I swear, next couple of true stories I do will be slightly more interesting, slightly more comedic as well. So yeah, thanks for listening and watching it. As always, till next time, don't forget, keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.